Thank you. Thanks everybody for joining us. Today is Friday, November 13th, 2020. This is a specially scheduled committee meeting of the Engineers Committee of the Architects and Engineers Board. If Mr. Heathcote, if you would like to give us a call to order, we'll proceed to a roll call and then we can start talking.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate that, and welcome everybody. I'd like to call this meeting of November 9th of the Engineering Committee for the State Architects and Engineers Licensing Board to order. Michael, would you please lead us in a roll call?
Sure thing, Mr. Heathcote.
I am here.
Mr. Campbell.
Present.
Mr. Bursai.
Here.
Mr. King.
Here.
Okay, great. We have all of the members of the committee on. We are also joined by our attorney, Maria Bush, and staff members Morgan Callis and Wanda Phillips. So,
Michael, sorry to interrupt. This is Maria. I just have to read the statement of necessity into the record.
Yeah.
You're right.
Maria, I was about to ask you to do that, if you wouldn't mind, please.
Sorry, I know it's like so.
Don't worry,
Here we go.
I was looking for the agenda so I could see what was next. I've lost it in a mountain of open windows on my desktop.
Oh gosh, you're totally fine. Okay, if that's okay with everyone, I'll proceed.
Yes, please.
Okay, this is an emergency scheduled meeting of the Tennessee Board of Architectural and Engineer Examiners Engineer Committee, which is taking place via teleconference on Friday, November 13th, 2020. Notice of this meeting was posted to the board's website on Thursday, November 5th, 2020. There was not a physical quorum present, and so a statement of necessity is read into the record and filed with the Tennessee Secretary of State as required by statute pursuant to TCA 844-108B2. If a physical quorum is not present at the location of a meeting of a governing body, then in order for a quorum of members to participate by electronic or other means of communication, the governing body must make a determination that a necessity exists. That determination must include a recitation of the facts and circumstances on which it was based. Further, TCA 844-108A3 defines necessity as matters to be considered by the governing body at that meeting, require timely action by the body, that physical presence by a quorum of the members is not practical within a period of time requiring action, and that participation by a quorum of the members by electronic or other means of communication is necessary. As stated, this is an emergency meeting of the Tennessee Board of Architectural and Engineer Examiners Engineer Committee. The purpose of this meeting with members attending by teleconference is to discuss a rule change regarding the acceptance of technology degrees. All voting will be conducted by roll call. Thank you all. Thank you for your patience, and we can proceed.
Maria, this is Alton again. Just a point of clarification, because you just mentioned all voting will be by roll call. Have you had an opportunity to review the law and determine whether or not in a committee meeting associate members can vote?
So under the statute, it says associate members are not to vote, but it does state that associate members should be active and participate in committee meetings, but that the voting privileges are not there. So today it'll just be, a voting from the other members to make a recommendation to the full board.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Michael, do you want to review the agenda?
Yes, sir. And if we get voting today, I think that would be absolutely amazing. The purpose of this meeting was to more or less start the conversation now so that we can finish the conversation in December for the regularly scheduled meeting about technology degrees. And the reason, on the agenda, it says new business technology degrees discussion. The reason for the scheduling of this meeting was because I did forward each of you an email that we had received from the NCEES, and it was regarding a conversation that they wanted to have with us because we had a situation where a gentleman was denied a comedy application based on the rules that we currently operate under regarding technology degrees. And this gentleman then went looking for really anyone who would listen. He forwarded his information around. He is seeking public, or I should say publication of his story as to not being allowed to practice his craft in the state of Tennessee. So I wanted to open up the conversation about technology degrees because as some of the higher ups here in the department were on that phone call, it became our realization that there are very few states in this country right now that do not accept technology degrees, and the administration feels like it's time for something to move on this. So my hope is that this meeting will start the conversation, and then we will have 3 weeks between now and the next meeting where each of you gentlemen can either do some research if you need to, or have some time to think about it based on the conversation that's had here today, and come back in December ready to move something out in forms of a recommendation to the full board. Alton, is that
Very good.
sufficient? Thank you.
That is sufficient. Thank you, and I appreciate you elaborating on that. Second, if you don't mind, I think Steve, Ricky, and Robert, have y'all had a chance to review the information that Michael sent us from NSPE?
I have, Alton. Robert.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Ricky, you and...
I have to.
Okay, very good. So I understand the administration's concerns. I also really understand specifically how our laws don't acknowledge an ETAC as a path to licensure. And I understand their concern that we may be, whether reasonably or unreasonably, blocking path to licensure. I'm not an advocate that just because the masses do something that it makes it right, but in this particular situation, if you count South Carolina, which apparently took action to sort of disallow technology degrees, let me just make sure I've got that correct. The way I read, Michael, the NSPE information, I guess that came out of some PowerPoint presentation they put together, that on June 30th of 2020, South Carolina determined that ETAC ABET degrees will no longer meet the education requirements for PE licensure in the state. So given that seems to be 10 states that, and the district, including, which I guess including the District of Columbia, that would be out of 51, that don't, or 10 states that don't acknowledge or accept ETAC accredited or degree from an ETAC accredited university as a path towards licensure. And I think, Michael, what you would like us to do is have discussion on that today.
Yes, sir. That is correct. Like I said, if we got to the point where voting happened today, I would be surprised. So this special meeting is really meant to jumpstart the conversation so that we can get it flowing and have something come out of this committee in form of a recommendation by December.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Michael.
Hey, Al.
Yes, Ricky.
When it's the right point, I can kind of give you my thoughts that go both ways. It might be a kind of a Kickstarter for conversations.
Well, what I was going to try to do is go in alphabetical order and ask, since there's only 4 of us, ask the preliminary opinion, and then if additional information or time would be needed to make a more thorough evaluation, but whatever the initial or preliminary opinion is of each of the 4 members of the committee. So, Ricky, you're number 1 on the alphabetical listing. So please go forward.
Okay. And I don't know that it's a hard opinion because I think this is really the first time we've had these discussions that are more in depth. But I think with the discussions we've had so far, I feel like we agreed that we need a pathway, or at least look at having a pathway for somebody with a technology degree. And reading that was great information about all the states there. The explanation column was much more understandable to me than the statutes themselves. The statutes were, I don't know, they kind of went all over the map as far as being understandable. But the idea of requiring the master's degree, if you have an engineering technology degree, requiring a master's, I kind of like the feel of that. I also the having additional years of experience. That I think that's seems to be reasonable. A lot of states are doing that, so that that is a different path, but it's a path nevertheless for technology degrees, and that can be for initial licensure or for comedy. I think I have a preference for us dealing with both and not just comedy. If a technology degree is good enough for somebody from New York, it ought to be good enough for somebody from Tennessee, and vice versa. I think I didn't like the feel of Mississippi only allowing a pathway for people in Mississippi. That just didn't feel right to me. So anyway, there's that conversation about a pathway that I support, both considering a master's and additional experience. On the other side, I think we need to understand that the way PEs in Tennessee are going to react to this, and this is ACEC and TSPE, they have been very lukewarm about decoupling, and decoupling doesn't change any of the requirements of becoming an engineer. It just kind of shuffles the timing of them, and that's been lukewarm and about 50-50 as far as I can see, or maybe most people are getting used to the idea. This is going to be, I think, wildly unpopular with professional engineers in Tennessee, because this is going to sound crude, but this is the way engineers think. So the non-engineers on this call can understand that the PEs are going to think we're allowing people who could not pass calculus in school to become professional engineers. And I think that's what's in their heads: calculus and differential equations, that almost all engineering curricula require, that these are the people who couldn't pass that. And I think the opposition to this is going to be what we all need to at least understand is going to be, I think, pretty big and loud. And so that's on the other side. And I don't think we've been talking about this long enough to get a feel from Casey on has this even been discussed. But you guys may correct me on that. You may know of some conversations that have been happening that I don't know about. So that's kind of my summary. Is I think a pathway is good. I think we need to realize in coming up with that pathway that this is going to be unpopular, and I think we ought to think about it for both initial and comedy.
Thank you, Ricky. Robert, you're next alphabetically. I'll be surprised if you don't have an opinion.
Well, then be surprised. So let's go through a quick historical perspective. We've had probably at least 2 legislative challenges to the technology degree. Both of those challenges have gotten beaten pretty soundly because in the legislature, because the engineering community was able to make the case against this. I'm not like, I'm a little bit like Ricky in that I don't know. I really don't know if I'm for it or against it. I think lukewarm is probably a good thing. I think there certainly are some restrictions that ETAC degree has, and it's not just the passing calculus or differential equations. It's how those mathematical principles kind of are flow into other things that we do. On the civil side, probably not as much, but certainly on electrical, mechanical, and other types of engineering, I think those things probably flow a little bit more into what you do and the theory behind a lot of things that you do. So my thing, I heard this at a conference, and it was really well put on why technology degrees should not be allowed, because of the deficiencies that they have, and frankly, I've forgotten some of those deficiencies. Certainly, the calculus DFE thing was one, but it was also how that education curricula is set up more to not put the pieces and parts together of a design as much. Not integrate other design principles or things into design, that they didn't have that training as much. So again, there were other things. So I would really like to understand from somebody that knows, not me, and trying to rely on a bad memory, on exactly what are the either real or perceived weaknesses in a ETAC degree, and if those real or perceived weaknesses can be remedied either through experience or coupled with a master's, or frankly if they can't be remedied. Again, civil, it's a little different because in what I do in civil, a lot of it kind of relates back to geometry and trigonometry more than it does, calculus or differential equations, although they're factored in. But so again, I can see on some level there being a path there, but the way our law is written is once you get an engineering degree, that opens the door. And so I'm just a little concerned about opening that door. And you're right, Ricky, there will be backlash from we'll have to have this thing. We'll have to really be discussing this and explaining the position well in advance of trying to get something passed, if that's the path we decide to go down. And last thing, I'll shut up, Alton. I appreciate the opportunity, but just because there has been an inquiry and just because somebody's mad, or is really not a favorable reason to go forward on something that may jeopardize health, safety, and welfare. So we have to really, again, make that paramount in what we're talking about. So that's it. I'll shut up.
Good points, Robert. Thank you.
Allison, this is Maria.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to ask, Robert, I wasn't aware that this was blocked at the legislature 2 times before. Can you speak a little bit more to the history of that? Because I think it's a really important piece. And it's just context for us, you know, that if this was attempted before and not received well, then, you know, that's a huge thing for us.
Sure, and I'm Maria, I'm going to miss one of these. The most recent one, I believe, was, and maybe both of the most. I know one of the most recent ones was either Timothy Hill or one of the legislators from the Tri-Cities. He had a constituent technology degree. Got upset, tried to get technology put in as a qualifying thing. Didn't understand why not. And I don't know that it even made it to committee. You know, again, the engineering community rose up in a pretty forceful way against it. And there was one other time prior to that, and I don't remember if it was when Casey was here or when it was Candy Toller. I want to say it was towards the end of Candy Toller's service in Casey's position, and I don't remember who it was, but I know there have been 2 times that we've done that, and one has been fairly recent, and I want to say it's within the last 3-4 years, something like that.
Okay, that's great to know. Thank you so much for
No
adding
worries.
that information.
No worries.
Robert, thank you for sharing that. That actually was helpful. Let's see, Steve, you want to enter your thoughts?
Sure. First of all, I don't think you'll find any agreement in almost anybody in our state that a technology degree is equivalent to a EAC ABET degree. But you all may recall that I think I said in one of our meetings not too long ago that I felt like we needed to deal with some way to let the technology graduates in and let them have a track toward licensure. And I think we do that in a variety of ways, similar to what some other states have done. When you look down that NSDE publication, several states have additional requirements, whether it's experience or an advanced degree from a engineering school that their undergraduate program is ABET accredited, but because most graduate programs aren't ABET accredited. So that's where I've been for some time. I like Robert mentioned, this is an easy thing for the legislature to bring up when one of their constituents brings it up. And I think the graduates of technology schools certainly have a better education than some people who, just for example, the master's degree thing that we keep getting hit with. Fortunately, last time we were able to make it to where it sunsetted, and also it several years of experience required. But there could be a situation where we feel pushed into accepting the master's degree. I just feel like the technology graduates do have a leg up on a lot. We just need to attach an additional requirement as we go forward.
Thank you, Steve. And I guess I'm last. And I understand I have been part of some of those discussions in the past with some of the professional societies. where it's widely considered that this would be a dilution of the level of competence, I guess, in the state of Tennessee if we allow somebody in with a technology degree without a lot of prerequisites associated with it. And again, Robert made a really good point. I mean, the focus is still on the protection of the public's health, safety, and welfare. The other concern, I suppose, that I would have is, are there other alternatives that would be out there that then would request, well, we think we're also equivalent and we should be let in because we have this kind of background and experience. You know, do we open the door for others beyond just ETAC to try to access licensure? I don't know what that would be. I don't have an example of that, but I know that the professional societies will be concerned that we're diminishing the value of an engineering degree, graduating from a 4-year EAC, ABET accredited university, and then the 4 years of experience, no matter which order the testing comes in, but that the requisite 4 years of experience under a licensed professional. I know that we're going to get a lot of pushback, and probably rightfully so. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't do it, but as I said in the beginning, just because somebody takes up the flag and wants to create or wants to fight this either legally or in the court of public opinion, and takes it to legislative representatives, does not mean that we should fold. Personally, I think I'm like the other three, Ricky, Robert, and Steve, that I think it's probably going to become a reality at some point in the future. I think we're going to get enough legislative pressure, and that same banner that they fly, unreasonably blocking path to licensure. And I don't want to diminish our standing with the legislature certainly, but by the same token, you know, I'd be really anxious to hear and understand how the professional societies feel about this, and could they or would they be willing to accept an ETAC accreditation as a path to licensure if we attached additional requirements to it as others have. I don't think I don't know. We've got the holidays, the Thanksgiving holidays coming up, and our next meeting is the 2nd. Our next engineering committee meeting, I think, is the 2nd. I don't think we'd have enough time to understand all of that from the professional society's perspectives. Casey would have probably a pretty good feel for that. I would value her opinion and her input on this. I think we would have time to have an open discussion with her, and if I know that we can't do that as a group, but I'd be glad to make that call and visit with Casey, tell her what this is about, and ask for her to formulate an opinion in advance of our next committee meeting on December the 2nd, unless somebody has an objection to that.
Alton, this is Michael. I have received word from Casey. She's on another call at the moment, but she does plan to join here. Now, I don't want you all to think that's carte blanche to keep talking for as long as you want. I'm kidding. That's a joke. But she did say that she was going to be joining here as soon as she possibly could. So she may be here today. Just wanted to let you know that. And also, since I'm on the mic, call-in user 4. Morgan, is that you? Are you on the phone? I'm showing somebody on the phone. If you could identify yourself, would appreciate that. Is anybody doubled up on a computer and a phone?
I am. This is Alton. I am.
Okay. And that may be,
And
you
I
must
called
be.
in as well. I don't know.
Yeah, no, we've labeled you, Alton. That must
Okay.
be you. That must be your phone.
I think that's Morgan. She couldn't hear before, and she said she was going to call in.
Okay, I thought it might be her because she's not showing as online.
Right. She couldn't hear earlier, so I think that's her.
Okay.
And Morgan, if you dial in on your phone, you can press, you're muted automatically, but you can press *6 and that will unmute you. I don't know, we can try that.
Oh, I think it's me. Do you guys
It's
hear me
you.
now?
Yep, thank you.
Okay. Sorry.
No problem. Sorry to derail that, but I think we needed to make sure that got to happen. I also wanted to let you know that Casey would be joining at some point, but if not, I too will be reaching out to Casey to get that industry association conversation started. I think that, Alton, you're right. That's definitely a group whose feedback will, in all honesty, have a very weighty delivery when we get it. So, now, sorry to take up the. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, this is Robert. Let me, again, I think this is something that we have talked about as a possibility, as well as how we handle master's degrees and how we handle. I think there's also some work we were doing maybe on, with the decoupling and some other things that we've got on our list. One of the things that I think would be helpful for us is either is some information from the academic side, either from ETAC degree provider, maybe, as well as somebody with understanding of the curriculum, also of an EAC, or maybe we're looking at evaluation between the two. And I understand the calculus differential part of it, but that's kind of where we land. But we don't get. I don't know any more detail than that, and it might be good to have those perspectives in front of us to really see, what the depth and breadth of the issue is as we move forward. So, not just Casey. I think we have to understand what those differences are, and I don't know that I do well enough right now. So that's my comment.
Hey, Robert, this is Alton.
Yeah.
I may not be remembering this correctly, but I think at some time in the past, Dr. Smith had put together a comparative analysis between those two.
Hey, Alton.
Does anybody else? Yeah, Ricky.
That I was going to mention Dr. Smith, but the other thing that makes me think of is the last NCEES meeting that we went to. I think Kathy and I attended. I don't think, Robert, you were able to go, but they talked about this technology issue and about as relates to the model law, because right now, I believe, if I'm right, the NCEES model law still does not allow technology degree as a pathway. And they had a vote, and I think it was tied, so it didn't pass. But people were standing up, making arguments for and against. And our friend Dennis Truax from Mississippi, he's a PhD and professor at Mississippi State, stood up and gave I thought, a very knowledgeable little presentation on exactly what you're talking about, the difference in the curriculum for a technology degree versus an engineering degree. And really, I mean, he knows exactly, I think, what you're after there on your question. And the other thing is he's a board member in Mississippi, so he understands the other side of it, you know, from a professional registration side, political side, the academic side, all of it. And I just think that Dennis Truax might be a resource for us to deal with exactly what you're wanting to know.
That's a great idea, Ricky. You probably know him as well as anybody. Does the committee think? I think it would be a good idea to reach out to him. I suspect he may be somewhat biased as a professor at, is he at Mississippi State?
I believe he's at Mississippi State, and you know, I mean, they've got. I'm pretty sure they offer technical degree down there as well as, of course, engineering degrees. So, I think our question wouldn't be necessarily biased. It's more trying to understand the difference between the two degrees and how it relates to engineering practice.
Hey, Ricky, this is Robert. I think that would be a positive thing, but I would agree with Alton. I think having somebody from the ETAC degree world to give their perspective would also be helpful, because I've heard, and I don't think it was him, somebody else a few years back kind of went through, and I tried to write some of them down, and I don't know where that is now. You know, time and bad notes are probably combined there, but you know, I think he would be a good resource. But if we had an ETAC person, that may also help us a little bit, just to see the differences and what their perspectives are.
That is, yeah. Well,
Does anybody know anybody at an ETAC college? I know Nashville State used to be one, but I don't think they offer that anymore. I'm not sure. Is there one in the state of Tennessee?
I am. This is Michael. I'm not aware of one, but I would like to say that I've had fielded a couple of calls from somebody at Eastern Kentucky. They might be willing to speak to somebody. I'd have to dig up her name, but that wouldn't be a hard find.
but Alton, are you just talking about any program that might have offer an engineering technology degree, or just one that
Yes.
technology degree without an engineering program?
You know, it'd be interesting to know one that was just specifically engineering technology only.
Okay. Well, I guess if we can't find one locally, it would probably be not too hard to find out from NCEES that on the side that voted yes to allow the technology degree, and that vote I'm talking about at the last meeting, who the proponents are. We could probably find that voice through NCEES as an option to doing that.
I agree. That's a good idea. I tell you what, Michael, if you don't mind, if you can reach out to Eastern Kentucky and find out, they may be a good resource for that. But similarly, if you wouldn't mind reaching out to NCEES and asking them, you know, they'd probably have a really good idea not only of where the ETAC colleges are, but which ones are standalone ETAC, not combined with EAC, and which one may even produce the most graduates.
This is Steve. I think ETSU has one. I don't know. I'm not positive they still do, but I know several people that have a technology degree from ETSU.
Well, I know University of Memphis does, but it also has the engineering program as well.
We can just reach out to the deans, in reaching out for the grant proposal process. We were able to, at least I was able to make some contacts pretty much at every school. So I'll make a note here. I'll call ETSU, Memphis, and Tech to start and see what they have to say.
That'd be great information. Michael, once you get that, would you mind just copying all of us on whatever information you get from them?
Sure.
I'm looking at ABET's website, and I see Austin P. and Belmont. They have technology programs.
Okay.
Excellent.
And I also just emailed y'all a document that tells the difference between the two. In Chattanooga State, they also have one. So there are quite a few in Tennessee, I believe.
Well, thank you, Wanda. That's really helpful.
That is. Hey, Alton, I wanted to do another element of what Robert's comments were.
Yeah, please, Ricky, go ahead.
Okay. It's just, I was going to give a real world example to back up what Robert's saying, just so, I think we realize that the education level is not just a kind of a made up status symbol thing. We're mechanical electrical engineers, and I specifically do HVAC design, and a lot of what I do, absolutely, somebody with an engineering technology degree can learn to do, working under a PE just like I did, and design HVAC systems. A lot of it would absolutely be able to be done by somebody with an engineering technology degree. We just had a recent project where we had high pressure steam on the job, and at its reducing valve station, we had to size a pressure relief vent. It's a safety feature to run outdoors, and the pressure relief vent sizing method you had to do integral calculus to size this vent. And this is big stuff. And I was so glad to have graduates who had recently taken integral calculus to who could help with this and remember it. But that's great, and so I think it kind of flavors my view that a pathway, a different pathway is definitely worthy to think about. But I think the baseline requirement that we have is a good one.
Good points, and thank you, Ricky. Hey, Wanda, I was able to open your email, and I'm looking at that. Who prepared this document? Do you know?
I can't remember. We've had that for a while, so I really can't remember who did that. But that was something that John had years ago. I'm not sure if it was Dr. Smith or somebody else.
This is kind of what I thought Dr. Smith had prepared.
It may be. I can't remember who exactly did, Alton.
Okay, but thank you for providing that. It's very helpful.
You're welcome.
Okay, so Michael, again, I know we'd like to have Casey on the line with us to discuss this, but I'm curious, does anybody else have any other comments, thoughts, opinions, or ideas, or recommendations?
Well, Alton, if I may, the NCES, when we spoke to them, did indicate that they have a team of people who specifically sit and evaluate these types of applicants, their coursework and their education. I believe they talked about it in that initial email I sent to you all. Towards the bottom, I want to say it was one of the last couple of paragraphs or so where they mentioned how they can evaluate these sorts of things. Because I know that that's one of the topics that you all were talking about there. So I just wanted to redirect your attention to that. But no, I don't have anything else relating to that other than I just heard from Casey again, and she said that I won't tell you exactly what she said, but she said that that meeting is taking a little bit longer than she anticipated. But I told her to expect some phone calls.
Okay, good. And I'll give her a call right after this to talk to her about this. But Michael, your point is a good point, and I would about NCWS and their evaluation, or the team of people who perform those evaluations. And I don't know if you'd reach out to, well, whoever in the organization that you know and can reach out to, it was Chris or Timothy or whoever, and try to find out whatever they've got, and again forward that information to us for us to be able to review and understand better. Would you mind providing that also?
Sure. We have, I believe Nina. I want to say Nina was who I spoke to about this one. But yeah, I will gladly reach out and see if I can get maybe a one-pager or something of the like to kind of explain what the process is and how it works.
Excellent. Thank you, Michael.
Hey, Alton, it's Robert.
Yeah,
I don't want to belabor this, but I think it is interesting in the documentation that it appears that most, if not all, of the people that accept the technology degree seem to realize that there are deficiencies that need to be remedied, either with more experience, a different type of education, or something. So I don't want us to leave this meeting thinking that we're the only ones that see that there is a deficiency, and it's just us being hard-headed. I think the industry sees very much so, and other states see very much so, that there is a deficiency in the technology degree. It's not just, Tennessee being stubborn or something. I think it's the profession realizing that. So just wanted to put that on the record.
I agree with you. If you look at, and again, numbers really don't matter that much to me, but it alarms me that there are 20 states that consider graduation from an ETAC university equivalent to an EAC education and allow them to petition for licensure. I mean, there are 21 that, well, actually, if you look at it, there are 31 who feel differently, 21 who require additional education and or experience beyond the ETAC accredited degree, and 10 that just don't allow it. So
Alton,
I'm more alarmed by the fact there's 20 that allow it just outright.
Alton, I would like to point out that Missouri did just change their laws and repealed the section of the law that excluded the architects, the engineers, the landscape architects, and land surveyors from this aspect. So now in Missouri, this is my understanding is a very recent change, but in Missouri, they now accept comedy applications from any person from another state that has been licensed for 1 year at a minimum with all the appropriate experience that comes along with it. Ricky, I believe you sent me that that article. Did I kind of summarize that well?
That, I think I remember it that way, Michael. I'll look real quick to see, but I think you're right.
Yeah, here it is.
Did they do that post this information that NSPE provided? I'm assuming, because it says very clearly in Missouri, an engineering technology degree does not meet the educational requirements.
I believe they did this in their last legislative section. I can't see a precise date for this one, but it does say under comedy licensure, the board is now required to grant comedy license to individuals licensed in another state based on an engineering technology degree, which would not be granted for a person applying for original licensure under section 327.221 of their state code. So basically what I'm reading here is I think that they are accepting comedy applications for individuals who are licensed in other states. However, they have kept their statewide licensing restrictions, or not restrictions, but their rules the same.
Yeah, Alton, this was in, I just received the fall winter newsletter from Missouri. So I think this just happened in Missouri.
Okay, so it's just very, very recently.
Right.
But again, as Michael pointed out, it only applies to comedy applications, not to initial applications.
That's my interpretation of what I just read there, yes. And I will send you the link, to this newsletter, and kind of point out the page for you all.
This is Alton again, but just out of curiosity, was this something that was forced or imposed by the Mississippi legislature, or is this something that the licensing board did on their own?
That I couldn't answer for you. I'm not sure what prompted the change. I don't know if it's just the changing atmosphere or landscape across the country, or if they had a similar situation where, they had a licensee who applied and was denied, and they went and made a public issue of it, seeking, publications to make this known to everybody. I'm not sure what happened there, but I suppose we could probably reach out and find out.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. I'd be curious to know what led them to make that decision, or what drove them to make that decision. Was it forced, or was it
right?
Otherwise?
And I read it the same way, Michael, that you did, that Missouri law still does not accept engineering technology degrees for a initial licensure, but that it had to do only with comedy.
Yeah, I agree. And I just emailed you all committee members and Maria, the board, or the link to this, and specified that it can be found on page 13 of the 11/02/2020 edition of their publication.
Thank you, Michael. All right. Is there any additional discussion that, for this committee? If there
What-
is none,
Hey,
go
Al.
ahead, Ricky.
So what are we going to do? You're going to talk with Casey. What are we going to try to do anything else between now and the board meeting in early December? Are we?
What I will do is I'll put together a summary of my conversation with Casey and send it out to everybody in advance. And I'm assuming that we'll have all the information that Michael gathers and and the information now that Wanda has sent us that we can review prior to our December meeting. And again, I don't necessarily believe that we need to be forced into making a decision at the December meeting, but I think that obviously this should be a topic for discussion on the agenda for the meeting, and I think that we need to allow sufficient time to, one, review other information, and two, to deliberate and discuss this extensively. And again, as y'all know, Casey probably will be at the December meeting with us.
Hey, I'm on the call right now. I just got on. I apologize. The TSPE board was a little long-winded today.
Oh, good. Well, Alton, if I could, I guess this would probably go for everybody, but in the notes that you're planning, if you're going to have an outside conversation, please direct those to me and I will make sure that everybody gets them. I just don't want to be in any violation of any aspect of the Sunshine Law. So I will take care of disseminating the information if you all would send that to me.
Hey, Michael, was today's meeting recorded?
It has been recorded, yes, and it's still being recorded.
I'll go back and watch it. And so I'm caught up.
Hey, Alton, just
Ricky, I'm sorry.
In response to what you said about before next week meeting, the other thing I can think of that would be on, like, I think maybe, if this could happen, it would be great, but, don't know whether it can be arranged in this time, but we're going to have an engineering committee meeting. It would be really nice to have somebody on the engineering side speaking to the curriculum thing that Robert's question, call in and give us the information there, and have the engineering technology resource call in at our engineering committee meeting. And I don't know whether that can be arranged for the December meeting or whether that has to be, the February meeting. But it would be good for all of us to hear the words, I think, and be able to ask questions.
Let me. This is Alton. Ricky, let me ask Michael. I mean, we've given you a lot of tasks here, Michael. I know we've got additional discussion with Casey on the line with us now, but do you think, would you have time to get, I mean, Chris is almost always at the meetings or joins the meetings anyway, but and again, I don't mean to diminish Lipscomb University at all. My son graduated from there and I love the program. But would everybody feel more comfortable in having someone from a university that offers multiple disciplines or full disciplines to be that person that provides the EAC part of the presentation?
I would think that makes sense. And if y'all need help finding, I've been in touch with the deans just this week, and I know, Michael, you have in October. I just sent them all stuff about scholarships, but I think that it might make sense to look at a bigger picture.
Yeah, I think so too, Casey. Michael, do you want to reach out, or do you want to let Casey have an opportunity to reach out to one of the deans?
I'm happy for Michael to do it. Happy for Michael to do it.
I'm sure you are, Casey. I will. No, I could reach out. Is there? I mean, you kind of touched on something there just a second ago, though, Alton. Is there a preferred program? You know, maybe something with multiple disciplines, or a school with a tech program. I mean, is there a preferred program that you would like to hear from, or would you just any? I mean, you know, I don't want to make it sound so pedestrian, but you know, would you just anybody who's got a program?
I think this is Alton, Michael. I think, and I may be mistaken about this, but I think UT Knoxville offers more degreed programs than any of the other universities, and I think they would have a pretty good holistic view of maybe why EAC is important in each of those individual programs and the applications of each. So my recommendation would be if we're going to reach out to one, reach out to UT Knoxville.
Hey, Alton, this is Robert. I tend to. I really think, though, that we probably ought to go to the preeminent engineering school in the state, which is obviously Tennessee Tech. And I believe that at one time they had an ETAC program, and may still do. I don't know, but
Robert, they had, if you remember, they had industrial technology, the industrial technology
okay.
program.
So there was a technology component, and still may be. But again, if you're going to go to, talk to engineering schools, again, the preeminent engineering program in the state would seem to be where you start at. Don't go to those second tier places. Am I right, Stephen King?
Well, hold on now, fellas. Let's not start a holy war here.
Oh, that's funny.
This is being recorded.
I just sent you all a list of the programs in Tennessee with those, and Tennessee Tech is one of them. They have an engineering technology program.
And the other have is Dr. Smith, since he is our resource on looking at, the applicant curriculum, could be a resource here too.
Yeah, I agree. And I really do believe this document that Wanda emailed to us, I think was prepared by Dr. Smith. I've seen this before, and I thought it was attributed to Dr. Smith, but it may not be. But again, if Wanda, if you or Michael could reach out to Dr. Smith and find out if in addition to this he has other documentation or information that he could share, I would value that too.
I definitely will.
Thank you, Wanda. Okay, and Robert, I'm also a tech graduate, but I'm not going to enter the fray on that discussion. But Michael, since we have Casey on the line with us now, Casey, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask her what we wanted to ask her. So we've been for over an hour now. We've been discussing how there's 20 states that just allow an outright engineering technology degree to apply for initial and comedy licensure and be licensed. There's 21 states who acknowledge an engineering technology degree but require additional education like a master's or PhD and or additional experience, but with that will grant a professional license. And there are 10 states, with now maybe potentially the exception of Missouri, taking it back to 9, that don't acknowledge or allow anybody with an engineering technology degree to either apply initially or with a comedy application for licensure in the state. So Robert had pointed out, and thank goodness for his memory, that he thinks at least a couple of times in the past, let's say half dozen years, that the engineers and the professional societies and the engineering firms have warded off attempts to get engineering technology degrees as a path to licensure in the legislature, through the legislature. Do you have information, opinions, thoughts, ideas about potentially allowing ETAC an accredited degree from a degree from an accredited ETAC school as a path to licensure?
So I have now been with the engineers, not you specifically, but for about a half a dozen years. And the bills that have come up, the one bill that specifically was filed and went through the legislature was a master's degree piece, not technology, although the person that bill was filed for was an engineering technology degree, had an engineering technology degree, which is how it came up. And when I was testifying on that bill, that was the question that came up, was he has an engineering technology degree, and I believe he graduated in 1984 with one of those. And so I will say that I think that this is the reason that I think it makes sense for you all to come up with what the licensing board thinks, because you are the experts over licensure in our state. What you all think will protect is reasonable and will protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans. You know, in my personal opinion, that second phase that gives you that second option appears to give you some discretion. I think the problem right now is that you legally don't have any discretion. You know, if that's their degree, they are not eligible for a license legally. And
state that really clearly in the laws, right?
Right. So to me, I think if licensees are, in order to get a license, you've got to go through you all. I think giving you the discretion to evaluate what they've got in terms of experience and degrees and all of that stuff makes sense. But I would say that that's not. I think I'm happy to carry the water for whatever you all deem as appropriate. And the last time I had 700 people in a room, so what, a full year and a few months ago, you know, I think I said to that group, we are in a position now on these 4 barriers, if you will, to licensure, this, decoupling, international degrees, and masters, that you all were going to think that you all were going to go back and study it and come up with what you thought was reasonable that we can then share. But I think discretion matters, you know, in terms of your ability to do things. Same with the master's degree, same with the rest, same with international and all of that. And decoupling, frankly. So I don't know that it's appropriate for me to say this is what you should do. But I am happy to carry the water for whatever you decide.
Casey, this is Alton, and I apologize. I probably didn't articulate my question very well. What I was really asking more than anything else is, you have your finger on the pulse of the engineering firms and the engineers in the state more than anybody else probably. And if this topic came up for discussion as a possible submittal to the legislature for approval to allow, in whatever format it took, and I agree with you, if it did go forward, it probably would include some additional education and or experience or both. What do you feel like the perception of the greater engineering community about proposed legislation to allow an ETAC or to allow the board the right to consider an ETAC application would be?
All right. So you're going to have a handful of people, and I would venture to guess that they will be the same people that don't think that have very strong opinions about decoupling. I think it would be the exact same people, and I think that they just feel the way they feel about their engineering degree, and that's fair. I would say that I think when you look at engineering firms, when they're hiring people and they've got jobs available and they want the best person to fit that job, the best qualified, they need to be able to get whoever that is licensed in Tennessee. So if it's somebody, for example, I keep going back to the masters because I can think of particular people that affect who are working in firms and have been licensed for 20 years and cannot get a license in Tennessee. I think that hurts our firm. And I think that there will be some engineering technology degree folks in the same, as long as they have a path to become licensed in Tennessee, I think the firms would be appreciative of that from the standpoint of who they are able to recruit to Tennessee to work for them appropriately in their jobs. But I would venture to guess that they're not, that those people would also have experience in all of those things. That's what I'm saying, I guess, Alton, is I will carry that and carry whatever you come up with and take the heat and explain it all. And I'm happy to. I mean, you're not going to make 100% of the world happy, but they're not on the board that decides whether or not people get a license.
Like James Carvell said, you really don't have to make 100% happy. You only have to really make 50% plus one. But in this particular case, I mean, we're potentially affecting the integrity of the profession and the health, safety, and welfare. So that's going to be the perception anyway. So it would be interesting to have other opinions, particularly dissenting opinions, in order to help us, I think, review and consider the potential for implementing something like this, or trying to get legislation implemented for something like this.
So, Alton, what I think would be important is for you all to have a proposal for people to then consider, so that you can hear specific problems that people might have with a proposed option. Because I think we've been talking around all of this about what do you here we've got I think it's different if you all say this is what we're thinking, comment please, rather than what should we do with technology degrees.
Casey, this is Maria, and I just wanted to make a point of clarification for everyone that this would be a rule change, just like from our perspective and what we're going to change. And so with that, it would be
Maria,
a rulemaking hearing.
Are you sure that it's not, are you sure that this is not in TCA code? I think this is a law change.
So I know it's in the rule, but it says it has to be, that engineering technology programs are not acceptable. I'll double check the statute.
I believe the statute spells out what you have to get a, double check it if you don't mind, Maria. If you don't mind letting me know, because my understanding is that we're dealing with a change in law before a change in rule.
Interesting. Okay, that's good to know. I'll check that and get back with you guys.
This is Steve. I just looked that up before we started this, and I think the law says that you have to have a 4-year engineering degree that's approved by the board. So they're written in the law. I don't think there's any language about the ABET engineering accreditation rather than technology accreditation.
I think, I can read it to you, Steve. I've looked this up. It's section 0120-01-.10, education experience requirements for an engineer. The one you were talking about before is 1C. In reviewing applicants holding degrees from non-accredited engineering programs, whether obtained in the United States or otherwise, which are substantially equivalent to degrees from ABET accredited programs, the board may consider the following factors, and it lists 2 things. Then under item E, it says, and I'm quoting directly from this section, an engineering technology program, whether 4 or 2 years in length, is not considered by the board to be an acceptable curriculum.
Alton, you're
So that's
reading
the piece
from
I was talking about amending. That's in the rules.
That's the rule.
Yeah, the statute is 62-2402. This is for engineer intern requirement. A graduate in a curriculum of 4 years or more leading to a baccalaureate degree in engineering and approved by the board as of satisfactory standing. But it goes on. I feel like we could work in language off of that, just because it says approved by the board as satisfactory, that's where we would amend the rule. I don't know.
Maria, this is Ricky. That's the way that I remember it, is that the law doesn't necessarily doesn't have that statement that engineering technology degrees are not acceptable. It just has that general that description, and then allows the board to have discretion. And the initial thought was that the rule that absolutely excludes technology could be rewritten, changed to allow technology with whatever under whatever scenario we decide is appropriate. And that, to me, that's the context of, and I still think that to look at it to know for sure is it, but that's the context I think we would look at, is does the language in the law allow a changed rule to then allow us to give us the flexibility for a technology degree?
I mean, to me, I get, Maria, I see where you're coming from on that, but on some level, you've got software engineering. I've never read it quite. I guess that's just I'll wrap my head around reading that law differently, because to me, engineering degrees and engineering technology degrees are not the same. So I get where you're coming from, and I'll be quiet about that part now.
Oh, no, that's fine. I'm glad you brought it up. I'll look into it more.
It's not. I worry that that allows. I don't think we've ever considered, we being a global term, engineering technology or software engineering as an engineering degree.
Mm-hmm.
This is Robert. So a couple things. I'm to the immediate point. I think a baccalaureate in engineering is a pretty specific degree that's spelled out in Tennessee Code Annotated, and it may have needed to be clarified with the rule, but I don't know that engineering technology degrees would be a baccalaureate in engineering technology, not in engineering. So I know that may sound like splitting hairs, but I think that's the reason the rule is probably there, is to clarify, not to restrict. The second thing, I just sent you all something. 2010 was absolute. They tried to get that to where they could sit for that. So that was before Casey's time. And I thought, Casey, that we did this fairly recently, and it may have been an engineering technology degree, but I thought Timothy Hill also had somebody with a technology degree, and this has been about 4 years ago. I can't find it.
Robert, I think you're right, and I'll go back and look, because I think you may be correct, and I may have asked Timothy to sit on it. Let me go back and look through my notes and see if I can't find that.
Well, and I'm not sure that I just know that the first time in 2010 we did it, it was knocked in the head pretty well. And I believe in whatever iteration it was done this time, it was knocked in the head by the engineering community pretty quickly. So, and I appreciate what you said. I think we need to, if we're going to do this, propose language. And that's what we've been talking about doing, proposing language to send to the community to review, not just ask their opinion on it. If we ask their opinion, we'll get 6,000 things.
Okay, very good. Casey, is there anything else, any other thoughts that you'd like to offer? Anything else you'd like to discuss?
I don't know. I'm at the mercy of this group, and this is this is for you all to decide, and I just appreciate that you're thinking through it.
Okay, Casey, thank you as always for your input. It's invaluable. We're grateful for what you do. And do any other members of the committee have anything else to add or discuss? Do any of the staff have any other items that we need to consider?
No, sir. I don't have anything else. Anything else here that I need to, excuse me, that I need to give you? I think we've got a pretty good general direction to be moving in. And I think I want to say that I believe that the, the purpose of this and the end goal of this committee is to, in fact, create. In my mind, this is kind of where we've always been moving, was to create that statement or the recommendation that would be voted on by the board to then be published for consideration. So I think that's kind of what Casey said, is we need to have that put together. I feel like that's what we've always been working for here. And that's frankly, we're not asking, I think, to move the world, but we're just asking to move the ball just a little bit.
Thank you, Michael. Anybody else have any comments before we call for a motion to adjourn?
This is Steve. I just want to be clear. I thought I was earlier, but I'm opposed to calling these 2 degrees equivalent. And I'm open to hearing others talk about that. But I want to be clear about that for whoever in the administration has suggested we look at this, I'm opposed to calling them equivalent. I'm not opposed to looking at a pathway for technology degree holders to become licensed that would require additional education or experience.
Steve, I would say that the majority of FTEs in the state of Tennessee would probably agree with your position 100% of what you just said.
Steve, this is Ricky. I agree with the way you just stated it.
I just wanted to restate that for Michael so he sort of understands where the committee stands, or at least where I stand.
I think the way you stated that, you represent exactly the position of the committee, Stephen. Thank you.
Also, this is Maria. I just wanted to make a point to, I'm sure Michael will echo this, but we aren't with the intent of meeting today. It was to hopefully determine what the committee and the full board would be comfortable with. Not to say that we want to push for deeming them equivalent, but what would the committee be comfortable with in amending language, whether that be a master's or extra experience. We kind of wanted to get a feel of that language in order to, hopefully get the ball rolling on this rule change. So Just wanted to make that clear.
Thank you, Maria. This again, this is Alton. You know, there are other, if everybody remembers, there are other elements about paths to licensure that were also open for discussion. I don't want to bring them up right now. Certainly we can discuss them in more detail at the December meeting, one of those being decoupling. We need to continue, as Robert pointed out last time, we need to continue to keep those things on our agenda and be prepared to discuss them and get all of these things addressed. I don't think we want to go in multiple times for revisions to our laws and rules. If we can probably put all of these together at one time, I think it would be more palatable to the legislature. Casey, do you agree with that?
100%, because I think if you go in with one piece and say you went in with just to fix the masters, and somebody has a constituent that wants somebody can easily amend whatever you bring to just write in the other three things, and for that reason alone, I think it makes sense. It also makes sense to just do it all at one time to make it clear that we are doing what we can to remove those barriers, doing everything we can to remove the barriers, and yet at the same time be cognizant of what will protect the public health, safety and welfare. So yeah, Alton, I've been saying that from the beginning, like we just need to address all of it at one time, in my opinion.
Right. Thank you, Casey. Is there any other discussion to come before this committee?
Hey, Alton, this is Ricky.
Hey, Ricky.
Two more thoughts, and one just listening to all the great discussion and the way Steve summed it up, which I really liked. Of the two additional requirements we kind of thrown out there in terms of a master's degree or additional experience, my thought right now is it feels more like a priority to having a master's degree, because we see the technology degree as a educational deficiency. I'm thinking Philip Lim and his three legs of the stool. Just had to say that. But we see that as an educational deficiency, and the master's is directly is directly dealing with that deficiency, as opposed to the experience. And that's not saying we don't want to have experience too, but I would prioritize. I think I'm kind of leaning towards prioritizing the master's as a way to address the educational deficiency. The second point is, I think at the last meeting I was assigned the task of engineering technology of this topic, and so I really want to thank Michael for doing my work for me. Thanks, Michael.
If I could bow, I would.
Okay. Thank you, Ricky. Good comments, as always. All right. Any other business? If not, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I will make that motion to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn taking precedence over all other business. The committee stands adjourned, and I want to thank everybody for this remarkable discussion today. It was great input. Very well done, everybody. Thank you. And Michael, thank you, and Wanda and Maria for helping put all this information together and provide it to us. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Be safe.
Thank you. Be safe.
Bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye.